Hello, my name is Meridian Grace, and I would love to welcome you to our new form of Awakening Health. It's been a lot of years since I've been with you, probably at least 10. The Awakening Health show is around for 20 years here in Austin. And now, not only is it a new revised show with me, but my life is new and revised, and I have a wonderful partner, Dr. Richard Massey, who's been joining me and bringing a whole new element to the practice, Awakening Health. So we have a medical doctor, and I'm a naturopath, homeopath, been at it for 40 years, and Richard has also been at it for 40 years, studying and bringing an amazing world of alternative medicine all to Austin to support the health of our community here. And that's what we're all about. And as a very young person, at about age 14, I found myself personally fascinated with alternative medicine and understanding what it is to be living in a human body and how to take care of these bodies. And I found myself exploring all sorts of different arenas than the traditional model. And I think that's because my mother, when she was pregnant with me, was told that she could never have a child. She lost her first child and was very afraid that she might not be able to have children, period, because the doctor told her it would be impossible for her. And she had the gumption to consider what it might take to have a child, and she decided that she was going to have a child. And she didn't follow the traditional medical model. Somehow I think I inherited that. And here I am, having spent 40 years looking outside the regular medical model for answers. I personally had colon cancer many years ago, and instead of following what the doctors had to say, I found a diet and lifestyle and a deeper inner questioning of myself and what was most important to me. And as a single mother, I was very clear that I wanted to raise my son, and I didn't have someone that I really wanted to raise him for me. And somehow, through the grace of God, I was led to answers. And my answers came through changing my diet, doing detox and cleanses, and really deep soul searching and spiritual practice. And I'm here today, healthy as can be. I have all my body parts, never having undergone a drop of chemotherapy, radiation, or surgery for that cancer. And now there's a whole new world that's opening up. So I'm imagining that many of you out there have explored the whole idea of detox. I used to be called the detox queen. I would do detoxes whenever my patients came to see me, and I would do them with them. I would do colon cleanses, liver gallbladder flushes, kidney cleanses, blood purification cleanses, and I did so very many that it was pretty shocking, actually. And I also did lots of water fasting and juice fasting and all these sorts of things. And recently, with the newest work that I found through brilliant, brilliant doctors, one, Dr. Dan Papa, chiropractor, and then also the profound work of Dr. Seafried and Dr. D'Agostino. All these people you can find on the internet if you like to listen to their brilliant YouTubes. I've come to understand that our mitochondria and our cell membranes and cellular healing is truly the answer to get well. That all the cleanses that I used to do before, and probably would have been adequate as long as 30 years ago, are no longer adequate. In a way, they're very much like a street sweeper, moving around the toxicity of our life, or our bodies, our organs, and a little bit gets washed away, but we still are just moving them around inside of our bodies. To truly go upstream to the cause of things, we need to look at a number of different levels. One of them is the biochemical physical level. Another is the emotional, mental, and spiritual level. And another one has to do with frequencies, like electromagnetic frequencies and all these sorts of things. Today we're going to focus more on the biochemical level and also our physiology. But I want you to know that profound healing can take place from higher levels down. From the spiritual, there are miracles that you've probably heard about through whatever your spiritual practice is. Just people deeply believing and having an absolute miracle where there's a complete healing that takes place. On the mental emotional level, we can get in touch with a cause that may have happened to us early on in our lives or may have happened to an ancestor, and we can complete a process that a disease might be expressing as a way of holding a loyalty to an old family issue that was never fully cleared. And we're living that out through our bodies. And as we find the answer, the body releases that issue, and a profound healing can happen in a very short period of time. We'll be talking about that in future programs. Hopefully Dr. Massey will join me, and we'll be talking to you about recall healing, and also the profound work of Dr. Reiki Hammer, who developed something called German New Medicine, and the way recall healing has come to life from that particular work that he spent his life dedicated to, in the understanding how each part of the body is a communication for a conflict that may have not been resolved in our family tree, and how we can be the living answer for that issue for our family and heal ourselves and heal our future and also even heal the past. So at another time we'll be talking about that. I'll be showing you through the course of our programs how there are brilliant devices that have been used for many years in Germany in their clinics for cancer there, and for autoimmune disease and for Lyme disease, and how we can get a picture, a little window into some of the subtle workings of our body, like the autonomic nervous system. We can learn about the autonomic nervous system through temperature changes in the body, and these are shown through visual pictures, and we'll be showing you these devices in the future, and that one is called regulation thermometry. Beautiful piece of work from Germany that Dr. Dan Beelan brought to the United States. And there's also frequency devices that have been developed by people that have given their lives for that development. There are devices that have frequencies that are designed to strengthen and support the body through the light that is foundational to us. We think of our bodies as just made out of blood and bones and sinews and things like that. But our new science has shown us that what we're truly made out of is light. And frequencies, sound and light frequencies, are the healing future. But we have devices now that are the beginning of that future, where we can drop frequencies into lasers and wash the body in lasers and help to support the healing process that lives within each one of us. We're going to be learning new paradigms together. A paradigm about how our bodies have the answers and how they are truly wise. And instead of trying to change a function, like if we're too hot, trying to make the body cold, asking the question, why would the body choose to bring heat into it? And how can we support the body in the process that it wants? Instead of giving a child an aspirin, for instance, when it has a fever, perhaps the best thing to do is to support that fever unless it gets too high, and let that fever bring the immune system there to support the strength of the child, and therefore supporting the immune system for the rest of its life. These are the kind of things that we'll be looking at together. But today, I'd like to bring our focus to the whole realm of the kind of world that we're in now, how it's so different than it was 100 years ago, 200 and 300 years ago. How our lives are filled with toxicity that we never had to face before. We have something in our world today that is increasing the challenges for our children. So many children are autistic. So many children have learning disabilities. So many children with ADD, and so many children with ADHD. And we're finding that today we expect, I think today we have like 1 out of 56 children who are autistic. And by the year 2032, we expect 1 out of every 2 children to be autistic. This is a terrible thing to have happen. And we need to begin to understand and look at what is it about our lifestyle that is creating an environment where this is happening. And this has to do with the type of toxicity that's happening in the world today. We're dealing with an increase of all kinds of chemicals in our food, all types of different pesticides. We're dealing with something called glyphosate that is also known to many as Roundup. And this Roundup is, if you were to look at the inside of an animal that was being fed on just glyphosate, you would see that their organs are deteriorating at a great degree. We're finding out that this glyphosate is affecting the gut of all of us, that it's making it very difficult for the villi that are designed to be tight and create a tight junction to maintain that tightness, and instead they loosen up. And when the villi in the intestine loosen, it literally allows feces to get into our bloodstream and cause all kinds of immune imbalances in our bodies. When this tight junction is no longer tight in the brain, it's no longer tight in the brain, in the body rather, it's no longer tight in the brain, and we have issues with our blood-brain barriers. And we're seeing that there's a huge epidemic of problems with the digestive system of our children, as well as the brains of our children. And when we are ingesting foods like glyphosate, which is that has glyphosate in it, it's profoundly affecting our gut and our whole ecology. We're using more and more antibiotics that are also contributing to this problem in our digestive system. And glyphosate is actually an antibiotic that's affecting the soil. We literally have a breakdown of the happy bacteria and microbiome in our whole earth because of what's happening with the glyphosates. And these glyphosates are actually going into the rain. When they're being sprayed, they're in the air, and we're finding them showing up in our rainwater. We're finding that these glyphosates and Roundup is destroying the foundation of a plant like corn, and it can no longer be broken down in the soil the way it was in the past and be used as a fertilizer for the soil, and therefore it needs to be burned because it won't break down. And when it's burned, we're adding more of these terrible glyphosates to the air, and therefore it's showing up in our rainwater, it's showing up in the water we're showering it with, and it's showing up in our water that we're drinking. And we don't even have fresh water to drink anymore. We're finding that our babies, our young babies, before they even have an immune system that can handle a vaccine, are being given vaccinations that have mercury in them. Mercury is an incredibly toxic substance, one of the most toxic in the world. And we have containers that are with skulls and crossbones on them that bring mercury into a dentist's office, for instance, to make these fillings, silver-colored fillings that so many of us have in our mouths. And these fillings are affecting the health of our own bodies every time we bite, every time we drink something that's hot. we're releasing some of this incredibly toxic substance into our own bodies. They've shown that a large filling in a tooth, if it were placed in a lake, would be so much mercury that the lake could be considered toxic to swim in. And yet, for some reason, it comes into the dental office in a hazardous waste container. If it's removed from your body, it has to be placed in a hazardous waste container to leave the dental office, and yet they say it's not toxic to us at all. There's a wonderful video called The Smoking Tooth that you can take a look at if you choose on YouTube. And with the smoking tooth, you'll see that even a 25-year-old filling that's in someone's mouth, just by rubbing it with a little eraser, releases these toxic fumes of mercury into our bloodstream. This is incredibly harmful, not only to you and I, but this mercury ends up in our tissues, in our fat, in our brains, and it makes changes in our DNA. And the levels of mercury also can be stored in our bones. And when women are pregnant, during our puberty time, when we go through growth spurts, and also as we age and start having bones deteriorate, this mercury or heavy metals of many different sorts, like lead or whatever, are released into our bloodstream. We're dealing today with these crazy levels of toxicity. And our children are being born to mothers who are carrying within them the toxicity of their life and of their grandparents' life and even their great-grandparents' life. Studies are showing now that we're carrying heavy metals for as long as 4 generations, unless we learn how to release them. Today, I'd like to at least open the doors, and maybe in our next shows we'll go into more depth, about how we can release the toxicity of our cells and therefore prevent the carry forward of these toxins to our children and our grandchildren and our great-grandchildren. We have answers. We've been creating these serious problems, but there are brilliant, dedicated people out there who are looking for the answers of what we can do because of the mistakes that we've made in the past, because of the major marketing to make it look like substances that aren't even food, things like sodas with all kinds of chemicals and foods with all kinds of preservatives that may have started out being grown with Roundup are causing for you and me and our children and our grandchildren and our great-great-grandchildren that we've never even met yet. We can actually go in and we can learn how to heal ourselves. And when we heal ourselves, our entire body is given a greater opportunity to do what it knows best, to do what God gave us, which was to heal ourselves by natural means, by foods, by homeopathic remedies, by color, by light, by reducing the stress in our lives, by bringing more love back to our families and our communities, by working together as a team. So what I'd love for you to understand is that we have cells. And our cells, I think I might even do a little drawing right now. And draw a cell. Your circle might be better than mine. And we have around our cells, most of us, something that we could call inflammation. And this inflammation comes from EMFs, from our cell phones, from our smart meters, from our Wi-Fi. It comes from toxic foods. It comes from chemicals. It doesn't come from what nature provided to us, I could tell you that. It comes from the stress that we have, being out in traffic, fighting, all those sorts of things create stress on our cells. And we have what's called a bilipid membrane And this membrane is 2 layers thick. Bilipid means fats. And we've been lied to for many, many years. We've been told that fats are the cause of heart disease, and they make us fat, they've said, and all these crazy things. But bilipid membranes are the protection of every one of our cells. Fats are our friends. Fats are incredibly important. All of our hormones are made from fats. Our brain is 25% cholesterol. Cholesterol and our saturated fats are our healers. They're our friends, and they are the providers of our energy and support. Now, each one of our membranes, we have all these different receptor sites coming off of them. And receptor sites are supposed to be nice and long. And these receptor sites will take in nourishment, and they will take that nourishment into the center of the cell. And let's make a nucleus here where our DNA is. And then we have something also that's very important for us as humans, and that is our mitochondria. So here's a little mitochondria. We have many of them in our cells. And mitochondria produce something called ATP. Now, most of us think that we get our energy or our fuel from proteins, fats, and carbohydrates. But actually, our proteins, fats, and carbohydrates are broken down for us by something called our microbiota. Our bacteria, fungus, virus, and all kinds of microorganisms. We basically have been told that those are our enemies, and we have to live this sterile life. We have to use sterilizers and on our hands, which happen to have horrible toxins in them that are carcinogenic. We need to be antiseptic. But honestly, we thought 10 times more microorganisms than human cells in our body. But the numbers keep changing. The most recent is a little bit more than the same amount, a little bit more microorganisms than we have human organisms in our body. But the idea is that those microorganisms will break down that bacteria, fungus, and virus. Those bacteria, fungus, and virus will break down our fats and our carbohydrates and our proteins into the types of amino acids from our proteins, fatty acids from our fats, and glucose, so that we can get the nutrients that we need into our cells. They do the work for us. They're also involved with communication from our brain to our cells and our organs and back again. It's our microorganisms that do all the work for us. And it's our microorganisms that will break down all the different nutrients that we need to do all the different cellular activities for us. And they will bring the nutrients that we need into the cell, into the mitochondria, so the mitochondria can produce for us ATP, adenosine triphosphate. And that is the fuel for our human cells. That's the only fuel that our human cells can use, not our food. Our bodies have for thousands of years existed primarily on fats, with a small amount of protein and a small amount of many, many different types of greens. I had the great joy when I was young, and an amazing opportunity to spend a couple of years backpacking in the woods. And during that time, I saw what was actually growing out there and learned how to eat from nature. And I can guarantee you that there's no broccoli growing out in nature. There's no cauliflower growing out in nature. And there's no big, giant apples and oranges and grapefruits just growing out wild in nature. there's berries, and there are greens that have far more of a bitter taste than most of us are used to having. There are little tubers on plants that actually have a little bit of a sweet taste to them. But what we consider food now is very different than what our ancestors had. And they knew, and their bodies knew, of the value of the organ meats. And so they would eat more organ meats and oftentimes give the flesh meats or the muscle meats that we consider the important meats or the ones that we want. They would give those to their animals if they had plenty. They primarily ate the liver and the heart and the brain and the thyroids and the adrenal glands. And they knew that that would keep them strong and healthy. There were periods of time when they were fasting. But the bottom line is that the body just knew how to eat so that the mitochondria were supported. And around the mitochondria are enormous amounts of fat, just in layer upon layer upon layer upon layer upon layer. And so eating a higher fat diet is a type of a diet, as much as even 80 to 90% fat, is the type of diet that we've now found is supporting and healing the brain for children with all kinds of learning disabilities, for children who have had all different types of challenges, for us who are finding Alzheimer's disease and Parkinson's disease and neurological diseases as a big part of our futures. We can do something about that by beginning to understand and learning from our ancestors and eating the way our ancestors did. But for today, I'd like you to start considering looking into a ketogenic diet. We'll be talking about that more. And we're going to be talking much more about how to support a healthy cell and how to get rid of these toxins so that we can reduce inflammation, the primary source of almost all the diseases that we're dealing with in the Western world today. So thank you so much for joining us for our first Awakening Health show, hopefully of many to come. And we'll be seeing you again soon.